And this is just another video that was kind of on my heart that I wanted to make. This topic entitled "Mental Illness: The Blight of Black Men." Just as a quick note, blight. I'm sure any and everybody can look this up if they want. Blight is kind of like a disease or illness or sickness. So mental illness, I think, is the blight of Black men. Why this talk? Why this subject? Why this idea? Honestly, it's in response to the recent discussion and craze of the topic of high value men, red pills, and the manosphere, Kevin Samuels, all of that stuff. And I understand it goes really deep. It goes really deep, but it's crazy how in such a very short period of time it has kind of gone from like this small little space on the internet to now like public conversation and discourse. And it's actually very scary and very sad. And I think it's important that we ask, like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And why are men thinking and acting this way? One of the things that tripped me out is this idea that like men are the prize. Like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to be very serious about this, but like part of it feels just crazy. It really does. Like, it just feels like so strange. Like, how did we get so far off base? And I understand that this is a problem that has existed for many years, and it's manifested in different ways, and that everything that we're seeing on the internet is a recent manifestation of a deeper problem. It really is. And so like, there's no simple or easy answer to deal with this topic or to deal with the subject. And there's no simple and easy fix. But I do believe a large part of it, maybe even the main source of it, is caused by mental illness. So in this talk, I'm going to clarify what I mean by mental illness, why I think it's a huge problem in the Black community, and more specifically, why it's a huge problem amongst Black men, what are the potential causes, and try to also offer some solutions to the issue. And so here are some mandatory or necessary prefaces. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist, and I don't have any medical training or anything like that. But just like any other YouTuber or anybody else who's putting content online, I am able to read, I'm able to reason, and I'm able to put things together. I think it's okay to be able to do some research, to be able to share your thoughts and opinions, and you can take it with a grain of salt, just like, again, anything else on the internet, whether it's about fashion and clothing, whether it's about politics, whether it's about anything. Like, we have this platform and this opportunity to share our thoughts. Again, you can either throw it out, listen to it, and find something good in it, or whatever. Again, that's the choice. It would be no different than if I wrote a blog. Preface is kind of the additional prefaces, like, why can I talk about this? Or why should I even have the ability to talk about this? Well, I am a Black man, and this topic affects me personally. Like, I've seen the impacts of mental illness in my own life and the lives of those around me and in my generational line. So like my father and my grandfather, I've seen it, and it's terrible, the impact and the effect that it's had on my life and on the life of other men in my life and in my community. And additional preferences, I understand that the topic of mental illness could be triggering. So if at any point it gets too much, please stop watching or listening. Like, mental illness is not a easy thing to discuss, and it's also not something to take lightly. Another preface. I'm also not suggesting the use of mental illness as a scapegoat for the condition and behavior of Black men in our community. I am absolutely not doing that. I am not using that as an excuse to be like, oh, well, I guess all Black men are just mentally ill. Well, I guess there's nothing you can do about it. Like, well, we should just let them off easy because, they're sick, And I say that to say, because I know, especially in the Black community and in this crazy world that we live in, people will toss out like mental illness and stuff like that and label it on serial killers and be like, well, he was mentally ill and he just killed people. Well, it's not that bad. I can't remember the guy's name at the moment, but that white guy who shot up all those people in to South Carolina, and they took him away and labeled him as like mentally ill. I'm not using that as a scapegoat, and I'm not trying to use it in the sense of like how the media use it, like, well, no, they're just mentally ill, and we just need to kind of feel bad. Like, no, No, I don't see it like that. I don't see it, and I don't intend to use it as a pass for men to act up and act out. And as I'll discuss in this talk, mental illness is something that can be treated if given the right attention and care. Like, I understand that there are severe cases of mental illness that impairs people from living the lives that they want to live. That requires severe attention and like intense care. And I think there's a spectrum to this. In general, we all have and can be afflicted with mental illness that impacts the way that we live. What I'm suggesting in this talk is that there is a situation happening within the Black community, and particularly in Black men, that needs to be addressed and that I think is fixable if we acknowledge it and do the work to try to treat it. So please, again, understand me. I'm not trying to use mental illness as a scapegoat to excuse any of the behavior that has occurred in our community at all. Again, I understand there are some extreme cases, but in general, I think as Black men, we're suffering from a thing that needs to be addressed and we need to fix it. We need to do the work to fix it. It is something that's fixable. All right, so let's just jump into it. So let's look at the definition of what mental illness is. A mental illness is a condition that affects a person's thinking, feeling, behavior, or mood. These conditions deeply impact day-to-day living and may also affect the ability to relate to others. I think, again, that's pretty straightforward. There's also a note down here that says a mental health condition isn't the result of one event. Research suggests multiple linking causes. Genetics, environment, and lifestyle influence whether someone develops a mental health condition. Let's look at another definition. This is from National Alliance of Mental Illness. This is a definition from the American Psychiatric Association. Mental illnesses are health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of these. Mental illnesses are associated with distress and/or problems functioning in social, work, or family activities. And some statistics here. Nearly 1 in 5, just 19%, U.S. adults experience some form of mental illness. 1 in 24 has a serious mental illness. 1 in 12, 8.5%, has a diagnosable substance use disorder. Mental illness is treatable. The vast majority of individuals with mental illness continue to function in their daily lives. I left this section in here that says mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of. It is a medical problem just like heart disease or diabetes, and I think that's important. Little note that I'm going to come back to. This is continued definition from American Psychiatric Association. Mental illness refers collectively to all diagnosable mental disorders, health conditions involving significant changes in thinking, emotion, and/or behavior, distress and/or problems functioning in social work or family activities. Here's a definition from the Mayo Clinic. Mental illness, also called mental health disorders, refers to a wide range of mental health conditions, disorders that affect your mood, thinking, and behavior. Examples of mental illness include depression, anxiety disorders, schizophrenia, eating disorders, and addictive behaviors. Continue to read here. Many people have mental health concerns from time to time, but a mental health concern becomes a mental illness when ongoing signs and symptoms cause frequent stress and affect your ability to function. A mental illness can make you miserable and can cause problems in your daily life, such as at school or work or in relationships. In most cases, symptoms can be managed with a combination of medications and talk therapy, psychotherapy. So for me, just this little paragraph down here, a mental illness can make you miserable and can cause problems in your daily life, such as at school or work or in relationships. Reading this definition just makes me think about everything that's happening with this manosphere stuff. Like, it's really sad and ridiculous, the fact that there is such issues with how, as Black men, we struggle to relate to, honestly, one another, but even our families and friends and in our relationships. We can see it everywhere. We can see it in our entertainment, in the music. We can definitely see it in this space online. Like, that's a problem. There's something causing a problem that we can't effectively live well, whether it's in school or at work or in our relationships. That stuff has been broken and messed up for decades and almost even centuries at this point. There's a deeper cause to this. And again, I'm suggesting that it's mental illness and it's impacting Black men, and that's impacting the Black community as a whole. Let's look at some more definitions of mental illness. This is from dictionary.com. Any of the various forms of psychosis or severe neurosis. So Those are big words. Let's look at those. The definition of psychosis and neurosis. Psychosis, a mental disorder characterized by symptoms such as delusions or hallucinations that indicate impaired contact with reality. Any severe form of mental disorder as schizophrenia or paranoia. I highlighted delusions and I highlighted impaired contact with reality because it makes me think of this whole thing about, oh, black men must be the prize. I'm the prize. I'm going to take a little second to talk about that. The fact that this is a narrative that's being pushed is really sad because I get it. All right, I understand that maybe you struggle with self-esteem and things like that. Again, as somebody that wrestles with mental illness and low self-esteem and stuff like that, sometimes we could try to push it way too far. We can try to push it way too far, and it goes beyond healthy self-esteem, and then it goes into narcissism, and it goes into why I highlighted this a delusional state to try to elevate yourself to a place of almost like being a god. Don't get me wrong, black men are important. They're valuable as I see it in my own eyes, but also in God's eyes. He created us for a reason. I think everything is precious in God's eyes, but I also think God puts things in their proper place for a reason. The thing is, for you to think and for you to push the narrative that it's all about me and I'm the most important thing, everything you do, speaking of women, everything that you do should be about serving me and making me feel good and making me feel better. You've really got it twisted. That was never the design and order of things. Even God creating and giving Adam a wife, a helpmate, she wasn't supposed to just grovel at his feet. She was a companion. She was an equal. She was there to help him. And he's there to love her, protect her, serve her, lift her up as Christ loved the church. The man dies for the woman. He gives his all for her. And yeah, that's a struggle. That's a hard thing to do, to commit to sacrificing yourself for the betterment of somebody else. But that's where we're called to as men, as quote unquote kings. The kings serve their people. It's not a good king serves their people. He protects them. He provides for them. He loves them. He gives them everything they need. And sure, there are a lot of men who have rushed into quote unquote kingship, but they're still princes. They haven't matured. We all have areas that we can mature in and grow in and get better at. But I do think it's delusional, which again ties into this whole mental illness thing. I think it's delusional to think that it's all about you and that you are the prize when that's not the case at all. You're here to serve and to build and make amazing things to help others. You're here to protect and provide and lead and help others be amazing, not tear down the weaker vessel, not tear down other men. And so for this thought to have crept in to the minds of these men online to then share and then have it to be regurgitated in an echo chamber, that's impaired, in my opinion, is impaired contact with reality. You got it twisted. You got it all the way messed up. Continued definition of psychosis: a severe mental disorder with or without organic damage, characterized by derangement of personality and loss of contact with reality and causing deterioration of normal social functioning. It's sad to hear. It's sad to hear that there are examples, and you can find them online. There are examples of black men who, when trying to holler at a girl or whatever, talk to a girl, get rejected and then respond violently towards women, whether that's physically abusing them with their hands or shooting them or all kinds of crazy stuff. What is wrong? How there's something wrong mentally and in your soul for you to respond that way. And I'm going to go back to the delusional. You think a woman that you're quote unquote trying to pursue owes you anything? She really doesn't. Just because you feel like you might have a little money in your pocket or nice clothes on, maybe a watch or something, some jewelry, or just because you believe this idea that I'm the prize. And so because she rejects you, now you feel like it's in your power and it's in your right to correct her, to physically abuse her? What is this? What game do you think is being played here? Do you think this is Grand Theft Auto in real life? They can just go around and beat up people, beat up women? What? Whether she responded nastily or even politely to you, this is what I'm talking about. We got to get to what is happening? What is happening in your brain, in your soul, in your heart that feels like it gives you the right to respond this way. And I get it. There's a lot of people who have anger issues out there. And again, I think it ties to the mental illness because there's something causing you to not think right. There's another definition of psychosis: a mental state caused by a psychiatric or organic illness characterized by a loss of contact with reality and an inability to think rationally. Well, she says she don't want to be with me. I might as well hit her upside the head. Rationally. A psychotic person often behaves inappropriately and is incapable of normal social functioning. Again, I get it. There are extreme cases of people who wrestle with mental illness, but it seems to be a general sickness in this space of Black men in our community, and definitely, honestly, in my opinion, this whole manosphere stuff. Like, something ain't right. This ain't good. It's not good. Here's another definition, breaking down the words that we saw in mental illness, in the definition of mental illness. This is neurosis, also called psychoneurosis, a functional disorder in which feelings of anxiety, obsessional thoughts, compulsive acts, and physical complaints without objective evidence of disease in various degrees and patterns dominate the personality. A relatively mild personality disorder typified by excessive anxiety or indecision and a degree of social or interpersonal maladjustment. So not being able to adjust well to situations and things that are going on in the world around you. So it's relatively mild, but I'm sure if it's not being addressed, mild can become severe. It's another definition of neurosis: a psychological state characterized by excessive anxiety or insecurity, compensated for by various defense mechanisms. I guess she rejected me. I should slap her in the head. And lacking evidence of neurological or other organic disease. There's a note here: no longer used in psychiatric diagnosis. So I thought that was interesting. I figured I should look up why. Why is that? Why is neurosis no longer used in psychiatric diagnosis? Let's go to the internet. Wikipedia. Neurosis. Neurosis is a class of functional mental disorders involving chronic distress, but neither delusions nor hallucinations. The term is no longer used by the professional psychiatric community in the United States, having been eliminated from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders in 1980 with the publication of the DSM-3. So it hasn't been that long, 1980. However, it is still used in the ICD-10, Chapter V, F40 to 48. So it's the ICD-10, Chapter V, F40, 48. Wikipedia again for the win. ICD-10 is the 10th revision of the International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems, ICD, a medical classification list by the World Health Organization, WHO. It contains codes of diseases, signs and symptoms, abnormal findings, complaints, social circumstances, and external causes of injury or diseases. Work on ICD-10 began in 1983. 1983, this is right after it was taken out of the DSM. Became endorsed by the 43rd World Health Assembly in 1990 and was first used by member states in 1994. It will be replaced by ICD-11 on January 1st, 2022. So, neurosis, what we just looked up. Even though it's not in the DSM, which, again, is a medical book, medical manual that changes, it's still valid in the International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems that's recognized, by the World Health Organization. So just because it's not in that book doesn't mean it's not still an issue. That means this thing, neurosis, is still a problem. It didn't go away. It may not be in this book, but it's still an issue. And it can manifest in different ways. This is mentioning anxiety here, compulsive acts, obsessional thoughts, a psychological state characterized by excessive anxiety or insecurity compensated for by various defense mechanisms, and lacking evidence of neurological or other organic disease. So there's still symptoms and things related to this that still manifest themselves, but because it's not in the DSM, maybe it's something that's overlooked and not discussed, but it's still in this other reference. I think that's interesting. Let's continue to break down mental illness. We're going to be off of definitions soon. All right, so what's mental? If we're talking about mental illness, we could mental and then illness. So mental, of or relating to the mind. Of, these are other definitions of relating to or affected by disorder of the mind. Providing care for persons with disordered minds, emotions, etc. Performed by or existing in the mind. Pertaining to intellectuals or intellectual activity. So mental is your mind. It's where you do stuff, where you think, what leads you to act. Illness, poor health, sickness, a specific sickness or disease or an instance of such. I thought this was kind of deep. Obsolete, wickedness. We're not even going to touch on that. But mental illness, your mind and where you perform and do things, your intellectual activity, illness is sick. So the stuff that you're thinking that leads you to act is messed up. Something's off. Something's not functioning in a good manner. Poor health, mental illness. Again, in this presentation, I'm trying to communicate that this is a deep root issue impacting Black men. We are not thinking in good health. And yeah, I'm saying we because I'm including myself in this because I'm a Black man. Sure, you may hear this or look at this and be like, I ain't mentally sick. You okay? And hey, you may not be. Maybe you're doing well. Maybe you've had all of the right things, to be in a good space. But I would say in general, all Black men are impacted and suffer from some form of mental illness.